Thomas Fletcher stood at the window watching the green hills of New Eden. The morning sun touched everything with gold light. At 52 years old, he had gray hair and kind eyes that had seen this colony grow from nothing into a home for 2 million people. His hands felt rough from years of building, first the landing pads, then the domes where they lived until the air became breathable. Now there were proper houses, farms, and schools. His daughter Emma lived just beyond the eastern hills with her husband and their 2 children. Beautiful day, isn't it? William Reed joined him at the window. William took care of all the farming in the colony. Thomas smiled. Hard to believe how far we've come. 10 years ago we were still sleeping in those cramped ships and eating those awful food packs. William added with a laugh. They were still laughing when the first alarm sounded. A loud, piercing noise that Thomas had only heard during drills. But this was different. The tone was urgent, real. The light changed outside. Thomas looked up and felt his throat tighten. The clear blue sky had darkened as massive ships appeared above them. They were nothing like the supply ships from Earth. These were darker, angular, threatening. What in the world? William whispered. Thomas didn't wait to find out. He ran to the communications center, where Elizabeth Peters was frantically pressing buttons and speaking into her headset. This is New Eden Colony calling unknown vessels. Please identify yourselves. Please respond. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. Anything? Thomas asked. Elizabeth shook her head. Nothing. And now we're getting reports of attacks on the northern farms. Thomas felt cold fear wash over him. Emma's family lived in the north. We need to evacuate, he said. William had followed him into the room. He pointed to the monitors showing live feeds from around the colony. I don't think there's time for that. On the screens, Thomas could see destruction spreading. Buildings falling, fires starting, people running. His mind couldn't make sense of it. Yesterday they had been planning the spring festival. Today everything was burning. We need to send a message to Earth, Thomas said. He pulled a data drive from his pocket where he kept his research. Send them this too. It has information about our atmosphere, our defenses. Maybe it will help them understand what's happening. Elizabeth nodded and began the transmission. Her voice was clear despite the chaos around them. This is New Eden Colony. We are under attack by unknown forces. We have sustained heavy damage. Casualties are high. She paused, looking at Thomas. We don't know why they've come or what they want. If anyone receives this, please remember us. The building shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered. Thomas closed his eyes and thought of Emma, of her children who had never seen Earth, of all the people who had come here looking for a fresh start. 2 million souls who had done nothing to deserve this. Transmission complete, Elizabeth said quietly. The building shook again, harder this time. Part of the ceiling collapsed at the far end of the room. William helped another worker who had fallen. What do we do now? Elizabeth asked. Thomas looked at the monitors. The destruction was everywhere now. There would be no rescue, no evacuation. Remember who we are, he said. Until the very end. The building rocked with another explosion, closer this time. The lights went out. In the darkness, Thomas reached out and found Elizabeth's hand on one side, William's on the other. It's been an honor, William said. The final blast came then, loud enough to drown out all other sounds. Thomas Fletcher's last thought was of the Earth he'd left behind 20 years ago, and how he hoped they would learn from what had happened here. His grip tightened on his friend's hands as the darkness took them. 7 light-years away, a communications officer on Earth received the message from New Eden. The officer stared at the screen in disbelief, then picked up a phone with trembling fingers. Sir, she said, you need to see this right away. The message from New Eden would reach every corner of Earth within hours, and humanity would never be the same again. Admiral James Wilson stood at the window of the Earth Defense Headquarters, looking out at the rain falling on London. At 63, his face showed deep lines of worry, and he hadn't slept properly in the week since New Eden's final message arrived. Behind him, the United Earth Council had gathered for an emergency meeting. The room held representatives from every nation, colony, and corporate state, many of whom had never agreed on anything before today. "Play it again," said Patricia Graham, the council chairwoman. Her voice was quiet but firm. The screen lit up, with the last transmission from New Eden. Elizabeth Peters' voice filled the room once more, speaking calmly despite the sounds of destruction in the background. When it ended, the room fell silent. In the back row, Oliver Bennett wiped tears from his eyes. His brother had moved to New Eden 3 years ago to teach music at the colony school. 2 million people, he whispered to himself. Gone just like that. Patricia stood up, smoothing her gray suit. "We've confirmed there were no survivors. The colony has been completely destroyed. And we still don't know why?" asked a representative from the African Union. "The data sent by Thomas Fletcher gives us some information about the attackers." Admiral Wilson turned from the window, but nothing to explain their motives. "So what do we do?" Oliver called out, unable to contain himself. A security officer moved toward him, but Patricia waved the guard away. "Let him speak," she said. "Many of us lost someone on New Eden." Wilson nodded. "For the first time in our history, all Earth nations and colonies have agreed on a united response. We will build the largest fleet ever assembled. We will find those responsible." The plan was ambitious beyond anything humanity had ever attempted. Every shipyard, every factory, every resource would be directed toward building a fleet of 700,000 warships. It would take years, but Earth would answer the destruction of New Eden. In the months that followed, humanity changed. Oliver quit his office job and joined the millions who volunteered for the fleet. Factories worked around the clock. Schools adjusted their teaching to prepare young people for the coming mission. Admiral Wilson was appointed fleet commander. In his new office, he kept a simple photograph on his desk. His niece Catherine, who had been teaching biology on New Eden 6 months into the project, Lieutenant Mary Thompson brought him the latest progress reports. "We've converted the old sports stadium into a training center," she said, "and the shipyards around Mars are ahead of schedule." Wilson studied the numbers. 7 years, he said. "That's how long it will take to build everything." 7 years. "Is a long time, sir," Mary replied. "Do you think people will stay committed?" Wilson looked out his window at the massive construction platforms now surrounding Earth. 2 million people died, Lieutenant. No one is forgetting that. That evening, Oliver Bennett stood in line at a recruitment center. The man in front of him, Richard Taylor, turned to chat. "My wife was on New Eden," Richard said quietly. "She was a doctor. What about you?" "My brother taught music there," Oliver replied. They shook hands, two strangers connected by loss. All across Earth and its colonies, similar scenes played out. People who had lost someone worked alongside those who simply couldn't stand by, while such an attack went unanswered. The largest industrial effort in human history transformed the solar system into one massive shipyard. 3 years into the project, Wilson addressed a graduating class of officers. "Some say this response is too extreme," he told them. "That we should focus on defense instead of sending our ships so far away. But New Eden deserves justice, and we must show that humanity will not suffer such attacks without response." The cadets stood and applauded. Among them was Oliver Bennett, now Lieutenant Bennett, assigned to navigation. On the 7th anniversary of New Eden's fall, Admiral Wilson stood on the bridge of the flagship, the EFS Remembrance. Around Earth, 700,000 ships waited for the order to depart. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said Mary Thompson, now his second in command. Wilson nodded solemnly. "Send the signal." As the massive fleet began to move away from Earth, Wilson looked at the photo of his niece one last time before putting it safely in his pocket. "We're on our way," he whispered. "We're coming." Lisa Armstrong stood on the bridge of the EFS Remembrance, watching the stars streak by outside the main viewport. At 28, she had dark hair pulled back in a practical bun and alert eyes that missed little. 7 years had passed since New Eden fell, and now humanity's response was finally underway. "Navigation report, Lieutenant Armstrong." "Admiral," Wilson asked. His voice was gruff but kind. At 70, his hair had gone completely white, but his eyes remained sharp. "All systems normal, sir," Lisa replied. "The fleet remains in perfect formation. 5 years until we reach the target system. 5 years." It seemed both too long and too short. Lisa had been a university student when New Eden was destroyed. Now she was a navigation officer on the flagship of the largest fleet ever built, 700,000 warships carrying 12 million people across the stars. After her shift ended, Lisa made her way to the ship's observation lounge. It had become her favorite place to think. The curved glass wall showed the vast emptiness of space, occasionally broken by the running lights of another ship in their formation. "Mind if I join you?" a voice asked. Lisa turned to see Robert Winters, a tactical officer she had befriended during training. His parents had been among New Eden's first settlers. "Please do," she said, moving over to make room. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing?" Lisa finally asked. 700,000 ships, 12 million people. All for revenge. Robert's face tightened slightly. They slaughtered 2 million people without warning or reason. What would be the right response? Lisa didn't have an answer for that. None of them did, really. But they had all committed to this journey, this mission. Life aboard the fleet developed its own rhythms. People worked, ate, slept, fell in love, argued and reconciled, all while traveling toward an unknown enemy at incredible speed. Children were born who had never seen Earth or any planet. Teachers like Dorothy Clark established schools throughout the fleet. Dorothy had lost her sister on New Eden but insisted that education must include more than just military training. "These children must learn more than vengeance," she told Lisa over lunch one day. "They need art, music, literature, all the things that make us human." Robert disagreed. "They need to understand why we're here, what was taken from us." As months turned into years, the fleet became its own society. They held elections for a civilian council. They celebrated holidays. They mourned when people died, sending their bodies gently into space with proper ceremony. During the 3rd year of their journey, Lisa was promoted to senior navigation officer. The ceremony was small, just Admiral Wilson and a few officers in his ready room. "Your parents would be proud," Wilson told her afterward. Lisa smiled sadly. "They still don't understand why I came. They wanted me to stay safe on Earth. None of us are safe if we allow what happened to New Eden to go unanswered," Wilson replied. In the 4th year, their long-range sensors began picking up signals from the target system. Lisa and Robert spent hours analyzing the data with the science team. "They're definitely there," Robert said. "Same energy signatures we detected at New Eden." Lisa studied the readings. "But something's odd. There's a lot of communication traffic, more than we expected." As they drew closer, the signals became clearer. The alien civilization appeared to be in some kind of internal conflict. There were broadcasts that their translators couldn't fully decode, but the tone suggested debate, perhaps even division. "They know we're coming," Robert reported during a senior staff meeting in the 5th year. "Our long-range sensors can detect their scanning attempts." Lisa expanded on his report. "But they seem confused. The signals suggest they didn't expect anything like this. It's like they can't believe what they're seeing." Admiral Wilson looked at the tactical display showing their massive fleet spread across light hours of space. "They're about to believe it." 1 month before arrival, Lisa found Robert in the observation lounge again. The stars ahead now included one that was visibly brighter than the others, the home star of those who had destroyed New Eden. "Tomorrow we begin deceleration," she said. "In 30 days, we'll be there." Robert nodded, his face solemn. 12 years since New Eden fell. 7 years of building, 5 years of travel, all coming down to what happens next. Lisa looked out at the star growing brighter before them. "Do you think they're afraid? Do you think they understand what's coming?" "I hope so," Robert said quietly. "I hope they're terrified." But Lisa wasn't so sure anymore. Something about those confused signals made her wonder if they were missing something important, something they would discover only when they finally arrived. The alien system spread before them on the main view screen. 9 planets, circling a yellow star, with the fourth world showing signs of advanced civilization. Lisa Armstrong checked her navigation controls one final time as the massive human fleet took up position just beyond the orbit of the system's outermost planet. "All ships report ready for combat, Admiral," said Henry Matthews, Wilson's second in command. At 52, Henry had a serious face and a reputation for being strictly by the book. Admiral Wilson stood from his command chair, his joints stiff from age and the long journey. He looked around at the bridge crew, men and women who had given 5 years of their lives traveling to this moment. Some, like Robert Winters at the tactical station, had personal connections to New Eden. Others, like Lisa, had joined out of duty or belief in the cause. "Before we engage," Wilson said, surprising everyone, "I want to try something. Lieutenant Armstrong, open a communication channel to the fourth planet." Henry stepped closer. "Sir?" "After what they did?" "Because of what they did," Wilson replied firmly. "I want to look them in the eye and ask why. I want them to know exactly who we are and why we've come before we act." Lisa's fingers moved across her console. "Channel open, sir. Broadcasting. On all frequencies with translation algorithms running." Wilson stood straight, his voice clear and strong. "This is Admiral James Wilson of the Earth Fleet Remembrance. 12 years ago, you attacked and destroyed our colony on New Eden, killing 2 million innocent people without warning or provocation. We have come for answers and for justice. Respond." For 3 hours, they broadcast the message with no reply. The fleet remained in position, weapons ready but not yet aimed. Then suddenly, Lisa's console lit up. "Incoming transmission, Admiral." The view screen changed to show a being unlike anything they had seen before. It had pale blue skin, large eyes, and a mouth that seemed too small for its face. When it spoke, the translation came through with an odd musical quality. "I am speaker for the commonality. You have brought war to our doorstep." Wilson's face remained calm. "You brought war to us first. You destroyed our colony without provocation." The alien speaker tilted its head in what might have been confusion. "The colony you call New Eden? This action was not authorized by the commonality." A murmur ran through the bridge. Robert stood up from his station. "They're lying," speaker continued. "The attack was carried out by the Purifier faction, a radical group within our society. When the commonality learned what they had done, the leaders were tried and executed for their crimes." "You expect us to believe that?" Henry asked. "We can provide proof," speaker replied. "Records of the trials, the executions. The Purifiers believed that any expansion of other species threatened the purity of space. They acted alone, against our laws and values." Wilson's face showed no emotion. "Why didn't you contact Earth afterward? Why didn't you explain?" "We did not know how," speaker admitted. "We had no way to reach your homeworld, and we never imagined you could respond with such magnitude. The Purifiers destroyed your colony with 3 ships. You have brought 700,000. After the transmission ended, Wilson called his senior officers to the conference room. The mood was tense as they debated what they had learned. "They're trying to save themselves," Robert argued. "They know they can't fight us all." "But what if they're telling the truth?" Lisa countered. "What if it really was just a small group?" Dorothy Clark, who had joined the senior staff as the fleet's civilian representative, spoke quietly. "If what they say is true, then the people, truly responsible, are already dead." Henry shook his head. "We can't just turn around and go home. Not after everything it took to get here." Wilson had remained silent, listening to everyone. Finally he spoke. "Our mission was justice for New Eden, not revenge against an entire civilization." "My parents deserve vengeance," Robert said, his voice breaking slightly. Dorothy reached across the table and touched his arm gently. "Would they want more death in their name? More families torn apart?" Wilson called for sensor readings of the planet below. They showed cities, farms, schools, a civilization not unlike their own. Scans detected no massive military buildup, no signs they had expected Earth's response. Speaker offered to share all their records, Wilson said. I propose we send a small delegation to verify their claims before we make any final decisions. Lisa volunteered immediately. So did Dorothy. After some hesitation, Robert joined them. If they're lying, he said, I want to be there to see it. As the shuttle prepared to leave for the alien world, Lisa found herself thinking of Thomas Fletcher and the data he had sent in New Eden's final moments. It had helped them find this place, but perhaps it might help them understand these people too. The shuttle bay doors opened, revealing the blue-green planet below. Justice or revenge? The answer awaited them on the surface. 1 year had passed since humanity's fleet arrived at the commonality homeworld. Lisa Armstrong stood at the same observation window where she had spent so many hours during their journey, but now she looked out at a blue-green planet instead of empty space. The 700,000 ships of Earth's fleet had taken up positions in a careful pattern around the planet. Not as conquerors or destroyers, but as a living memorial. Each ship had been renamed after someone who died on New Eden. Lisa now served aboard the Thomas Fletcher. Beautiful view, isn't it? Admiral Wilson joined her at the window. Though officially retired, he had stayed to oversee the Memorial Fleet's establishment. Yes, sir, Lisa replied. Very different from what we imagined when we set out. The truth about New Eden's destruction had been verified through weeks of careful investigation. The Purifiers, a small but powerful faction within the commonality, had indeed acted alone in attacking the human colony. They believed all other species threatened their cosmic purity. When the main commonality government discovered the attack, they had tried and executed the leaders but had no way to contact Earth to explain. It's almost time, Wilson said, checking his watch. The ceremony begins in 30 minutes. Today marked the anniversary of New Eden's fall. For the first time, the Memorial Fleet would perform what would become an annual tradition, the Remembrance Illumination. Lisa made her way to the bridge where Robert Winters waited. His anger had slowly transformed over the past year as he worked directly with the commonality historians to document what happened to New Eden. Ready? She asked him. As ready as I'll ever be, he replied with a small smile. At precisely the time that New Eden had fallen 13 years ago, Admiral Wilson gave the signal. Ship by ship, the fleet activated their running lights in a carefully planned sequence. From the planet below, it would look like a new constellation taking shape, the outline of Earth's continents glowing in the darkness of space. On the planet's surface, James Carroll, one of the human ambassadors, stood with thousands of commonality, citizens who had gathered to witness the memorial. The blue-skinned aliens watched in respectful silence as the lights appeared overhead. Beside James stood a commonality historian named Teacher, who had spent months interviewing humans about New Eden. Your people chose a powerful symbol, Teacher said quietly. Not destruction, but remembrance. It wasn't an easy choice, James admitted. Many wanted revenge. That would have been understood, Teacher replied. The Purifiers brought this upon us. The alliance between humans and the commonality had grown steadily over the past year. The aliens' medical knowledge had already saved thousands of lives back on Earth. In return, humans had shared engineering techniques that helped improve the commonality's environmental systems. Back on the Thomas Fletcher, Lisa, Robert, and Dorothy Clark watched the ceremony on the main view screen. Dorothy had become the head of a new educational exchange program. Do you think we made the right choice? Lisa asked, echoing a question many still debated. Robert was quiet for a moment. My parents loved learning about new cultures. That's why they went to New Eden in the first place. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I think they would prefer this memorial to any amount of revenge. Dorothy nodded. We found something better than vengeance. We found a future. On the planet below, the gathering had grown quiet as Teacher addressed the crowd. The humans have a saying, the historian told them, that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it, but they have shown us that remembering doesn't have to mean continuing the cycle of violence. It can mean building something new from loss. As night fell completely, the constellation of ships shone brightly overhead. Two species looked up together and remembered. Later that evening, Lisa sat in the quiet of her quarters reading a message from her parents back on Earth. They had opposed the fleet's mission at first, but now expressed pride in what had been accomplished. A knock sounded at her door. Robert entered holding 2 cups of tea. "I thought you might want company," he said. They sat together in comfortable silence, much as they had done so many times during the long journey here. "We came so far to find answers," Lisa said eventually. "Did you find yours?" Robert considered. "This. Not the ones I expected, but maybe the ones I needed." Below them, the commonality world turned, its lights twinkling in patterns not so different from Earth's cities at night. And above, the ships of humanity's memorial fleet kept their silent vigil, not as harbingers of destruction, but as bridges between worlds, their lights spelling out a message that could be read across the stars. Remember, learn, continue. Tomorrow, Lisa would begin training commonality pilots on human navigation systems. Robert would continue his work on the historical archives. The fleet would remain as both memorial and mission, a reminder of loss and a promise for the future. The stars looked different here at the edge of unknown space, but for the first time since leaving Earth, they felt like home.